Welcome to our YouTube channel. In today's video, we will be taking a closer look at a science experiment gone wrong. We had originally set out to test the effects of a medicine that claims to give individuals superhuman speed and the ability to perceive life in slow motion. However, as the experiment progressed, things took a turn for the worse and what was supposed to be an exciting journey turned into a nightmare. Join us as we recount the events of this disturbing experiment and explore the consequences of seeking out superhuman abilities. This is a cautionary tale that serves as a reminder of the dangers of tampering with nature. We hope you will join us for this important discussion. Please kill me if you're armed and on the metro. Make it a kill shot. Shoot me in the head at a little downward angle. I need the bullet to go as far as possible through my brain before reaching my memory. If I'm lucky, the feeling of a bullet hitting my head will last only a few decades. As bad as that sounds, you'll be giving me a huge favor. A headshot as right away is the better option. My struggle began almost 10,000 years ago, around 9:15 a.m. today. I supplement my income by taking part in drug tests. I'm a healthy subject who takes experimental medications to evaluate health effects. It used to be a liver medication. It's sometimes been anything for blood pressure or diabetes. They told me this morning that the medicine I took was a psychotropic chemical designed to boost mental function. In the recreational sense, none of the drugs I've tried have ever done anything for me. In other terms, neither of the medications I've tried have given me a boost or mellowed me down in any way. Maybe I've always been in the placebo group, but nothing I've tried has had any effect on me. Today's medicine was unique. This crap works. At 10:15 a.m., they gave me a medication and asked me to stay in the main lobby till they called me back for several testing. Only around 30 minutes, said the research assistant. I slumped into the waiting room couch and read a few paragraphs from the coffee table copy of Psychology Today. When I completed the Psychology Today, they hadn't contacted me back, so I picked up a US news magazine and read it from beginning to end. Then I picked up an old magazine of Scientific American. What had taken them so long? I sluggishly moved my head to see the time on the wall clock. It was 10:23 a.m. In 8 minutes, I had finished all 3 magazines. I ended up thinking that this was going to be a long day. I was correct. There was a little shelf in the main lobby with a few old hardcovers on it. When I stood up to walk to the shelf, my legs hardly moved. It's not that they were powerless. They were simply weak. Getting from the sofa took 1 whole minute, and taking 2 steps to the shelf took another. I started digging through the old books on the shelf and chose a random book. My arms were having the same issues as my legs. It took a while just to put 1 foot on top of the other to reach the book. I became exhausted just waiting for my hand to reach the book's cover. I slogged back to the couch and fell upon it in a slow-motion fall similar of astronauts on the moon's low-gravity jumps. I slowly opened the book and began reading. Before they called me back. "How are you feeling?" asked the research assistant. "I feel heavy," I said. "It's in fact the opposite way. Because you're so fast, everything appears to be moving slowly. However, my legs, my arms, they're moving at a snail's pace. Your body looks like it's moving slowly because your brain is quick. Your brain is working at 10 to 20 times the typical rate. You're processing and seeing reality at lightning speed. However, your body is still bound by biomechanical rules. Mike, you're going much quicker than a regular person." She attempted to jog. "But your brain is functioning so fast right now that your fast walk appears to you to be quite slow." I remembered my slow-motion collapse onto the waiting room couch. Even if my muscles have slowed, my body would still respond to gravity in the same manner. But I collapsed in slow motion in the waiting room. Slow muscles were unable to understand why gravity appeared to be weaker. My mind was running at light speed 10. That's how I got through 3 magazines and the first 30 parts of my most latest book in 15 minutes. They took me to a variety of tests. The physical testing was enjoyable. They asked me to juggle 3 balls. Then there are 4. Then there's 6. I had no trouble holding 6 balls in the air since they moved so slowly. It was boring, Mike. I was waiting for every ball to complete its circle so I could grab it in slow motion and throw it into the air again. They tossed Cheerios into the air, which I collected with chopsticks. They dropped a few coins, and I calculated the full amount before they hit the ground. The mental exams were less enjoyable but very informative. Complete a 50-word word search, 3 seconds. Solve a complicated maze written on poster-sized paper, 2 seconds. View a 10-second slideshow and answer detailed questions about what you see, 95% right. They said I was above 250 on the Knopf scale. That appears to be far beyond the superhuman level of mental speeds. They then dismissed me. It'll go away in a few hours, they said, which will look to you as days. Make use of the residual effects to complete work. While you're still in high-speed mode, catch up on your work emails. The trip home was awful. It was just 3 metro stops, but still it took nearly 35 minutes in real-world time. But it looked like days in my drug-accelerated hypertime. Days. Walking from the clinical research office to the elevator seemed to take over an hour. I ran from the office, hoping my legs will go quicker. But the rules of biomechanics trapped me. I couldn't make my legs move quicker, no matter how quick my head was. The massive gap between my body and brain made judging when and how to slow down, turn, or twist my body incredibly difficult. I basically transformed into an enormous, slow-motion spaz. I overestimated my speed and hit the wall beside the elevator button at high speed. Even if I saw the wall coming towards me, I couldn't move my finger, which was stretched to press the elevator button, quickly enough, and it slammed on the wall. Hard. The pain was terrible. If my mind was working at normal speed, it would have just hurt for around 30 seconds. However, in my high state, the severe pain seemed to continue for half an hour. 45 minutes, maybe. The elevator trip was terrible. I felt like I spent 4 or 5 hours just ascending 7 stories, with nothing except the interior of the elevator cage to look at. I ran to the subway station. This stage was really enjoyable, I must say. Even though my body moved at what felt to be a snail's pace, I was able to carefully pick how and where to put my feet, swing my arms, and spin my torso. It just took a few blocks to adjust to having a brain that was 200 times faster than my body. The rest of the way, I literally sprint danced, bending and juking around people on the sidewalk and avoiding moving vehicles with inches, aka minutes, of space. In my time period, I spent an hour going into the subway and rushing to the station. Never-ending boredom while waiting for the Red Line train to come. Although it was true that there were more to look at on the subway station rather than in the elevator, it was still quite boring. That book should have been mine to steal. In slow time, the Red Line train raced into the station. My fast mind changed the usual strong scream of its brakes to a long, deep tone, like a monotonic trumpet solo. The screaming metro train wasn't the only thing that was 3 octaves lower than usual. All sound has been slowed to near inaudibility. voices had vanished, having moved past my human hearing range. On my metro vehicle, I could hear a screaming baby whose screams had softened to sound like whale sounds. Sharp horns and vehicles bouncing over potholes were replaced with low, muddy roars reminiscent of distant thunder. I could still hear and interact with the research workers when I returned to the research offices. But now it would be difficult to communicate verbally with anyone. The drugs effects were still escalating. I must have spent days on that damned Red Line train. Days. Listening to the wailing baby's wail song and the brakes tuba solo. Smells did not appear to be changed when typical voices were frequency shifted out of my auditory range. I never got oblivious to my own body odor, the stench of the train's brakes, and the smorgasbord of farts and other odors floating through the metro car. I eventually returned to my home. Running through my open door and into the front hall was like a calm, comfortable float down a smooth river. I was glad to be home. At the very least, I had something to do there. I went back to the book I was reading and completed it. Despite the fact that I tore several of the pages, it appeared like the most of the time I spent finishing the book was spent on page turning rather than reading. I'd only been home for 3 minutes. I tried accessing the internet. My God, computers take a long time to start these days, but it was much too slow. Each new page seems to take hours to load and a fraction of a second to read. I've read 100 things on my news feed and only have 3 minutes left. I finished 2 more books from my stack of unread books. 4 minutes had gone. I chose to try to sleep off the drug's lasting effects. Sadly, whatever section of my brain is in charge of perception, the section boosted to hyperspeed by the medication is not the exact same as the part that controls sleep. Due to having been up for what felt like days, my physical brain still thought it was 1:25 p.m. It was not prepared to sleep. However, I tried to sleep. I walked to my bedroom, a 45-minute trip inside my flat, and jumped into bed, lazily falling like a feather onto the mattress. I closed my eyes and laid there for hours and hours, 10 minutes in actual time, until finally giving up. Sleep refused to come. I was about to spend what felt like days, if not weeks, stuck in a SlowMotion jail. As a result, I took Xanax. It was horrible to feel the medicine and the water that I used to drink it going down my throat. A mass that blocked my breathing and pushed down my throat like a snail. I finished a book. It had been 10 minutes. I continued reading. I've had the Xanax for 18 minutes. In anger at my circumstances, I tossed the book across the room. The book spun and pirouetted in the air like a feather in the wind. It hit the wall with a long, low rumble, the only sound I'd heard in what felt like hours, and then dropped to the floor like a flip-flop in a swimming pool. Since I took the medication, the gravity force has not changed. The physical laws were the same. It was only my view of time that had gone insane. This meant I could measure the effects of the medication by how quickly everything seemed to fall. I calculated the drug's effects were still increasing based on the time it took the book to fall to the floor. I was reading a magazine. I switched on the television and watched each frame of footage as if I were watching a slideshow. Annoyed, I switched off the television. I continued to read. Churchill's first 2 books of a history of the English-speaking peoples. It's not a light read. To be honest, I despised it. But, given the hours of boredom required to go grab another book from my shelf, sitting on the couch and reading Churchill seemed easier. Or, at the very least, less bad. It had been 35 minutes since I had taken the Xanax. I closed my eyes and sat down on the couch. The passage of time. I inhaled for several hours. The passage of time. I breathed for several hours more. Sleep would not come. I needed a fresh strategy. I returned to the offices where the medicine was given to me. Perhaps they have anything that can offset its effects. Or, at the very least, something that would knock me out till it wore off. I left my flat as quickly as possible, taking hours in my time limit. I did not even bother to lock the door. It would have been far too time-consuming. Down the stairs, running is faster than using the elevator, through the lobby, out the front door, and into the street. These few items seemed like a long day of work. Rushing down the street, bouncing and weaving among people almost with superhuman ability. At the metro, go down the first set of steps. Over the landing. One more hour. Then it was time for the second set of steps. That's when the Xanax kicked in. The Xanax did not put me to sleep. Absolutely not. Instead, it must have had a bad reaction with the experimental medicine I took this morning. I was sprinting down the second set of stairs, going slowly but making visible progress. Then, all of a sudden, everything came to an end. The slow rumble of the street and subway sounds had died away, leaving me with the most beautiful silence I'd ever encountered. My descending motion appeared to be entirely frozen. My impression of time was probably a few hundred times slower than real time before the Xanax went in. Time moved hundreds of times slower once the Xanax took effect. Every second felt like a day to me. Even adjusting my eyes to focus on a new spot seemed like a glacial scroll over my visual field. When my intellect was hundreds of times quicker than my body, I learned how to walk, run, and jump during the course of the afternoon. However, with an additional 4 or 5 orders of magnitude of slowing imposed by the Xanax, body control was nearly hard to achieve. I tripped on the stairwell. Even though I was almost stuck in mid-step, I couldn't control my muscles. I directed my foot forward for hours, then backward for hours when I thought I'd missed the next stride. Hours were spent attempting to fix the angle of my ankle, then readjusting when it seemed incorrect. Regardless of my attempts, I rolled my ankle on the following step. The delay did little to relieve the pain. My twisted ankle has been undergoing tension for hours. The nerve impulses that transmit pain to the brain must function differently than the nerves in my ear. Sonic energy was dispersed and reduced over time until it was unnoticeable. The alteration in my experience of time had no effect on the flow of pain entering my brain. Hours of placing weight on my twisted ankle become hours of rising pain over increasing pain. My high-speed mind was entirely unable to control my low-speed body as I pitched forward. For days, I slid downward, turning my torso enough to keep my head from hitting the ground first. I finally landed right on my right shoulder. At first, the effect was hardly obvious. When my shoulder made contact with the ground, I felt a tiny pressure in it. For hour after hour, the pressure increased, causing huge pain. My shoulder finally gave way, popping out of its socket with a painful pull. Days later, lying on the ground, looking at the ceiling, I came to a stop. The pain in my shoulder was still as intense as a new major trauma. During that fall, I had plenty to think. If every second felt like a day to me, then every minute of real-world time would feel like years. Even if the medicine left my system in 2 or 3 hours, this nightmare seemed to last decades. I had a strategy by the time I touched the ground. I'd find my way to the station and toss myself in front of a train. I knelt on my hands and knees. Days of pain from my twisted shoulder. I rolled onto my back after underestimating my turn. I tried again, falling onto my face as I struggled to manage a body that moved slower than grass. Weeks of hard work were eventually praised with progress. I was able to stand on my hands and knees. If just getting on all fours was this hard, I felt walking or sprinting would be impossible. As a result, I crawled. I made my way through the subway tunnel. The stupid looks on the crowd's faces stayed with me for weeks. I went beneath the turnstile and onto the stairs. The stairs dumped the rush hour crowd onto the station as quickly as a glacier dumps ice into the sea. During my long descent, I stared out over the busy station. The train status indicator showed that the next train will not arrive for another 20 minutes. To me, 20 minutes felt like a year. I'd have to stay a year waiting to die on the subway station. I crept down the stairs, having survived days of passengers' dumb expressions. I crawled a few feet to a metal seat and curled up next to it, hoping to find a position that would relieve the pain in my shoulder. Then my time problem increased. Worse could happen. The enormous slowdown on the stairway was only the start of the combination between the experimental medicine and the insomnia. It hit me full force when I was snuggled up on the bench. I made a blink. Years of sorrow passed. Sound had already disappeared, and with my blink, so had sight. My fall's pain was all that left. My hyperactive brain lost little time in making up for the absence of visual data. I was approached by voices. They sang to me in languages that were not real. Patterns, people, and colors flashed across my thoughts. I reflected on my entire life and imagined living another. I had forgotten about English. I fell into a deep depression. I talked to God. I turned to God. With my imaginations, I created a new world and brought it to reality. Then I repeated the process. Once again. With glacial slowness, my eyes opened. A foggy light. Weeks. A bright gap. Weeks. A close-up of the subway station, with passengers' feet and an advertising on the opposite wall. I grabbed my phone from my pocket. A multi-decade undertaking. How can I possibly describe my boredom? The pain in my shoulder is insignificant compared to the boredom. Every idea I can think has already been thought hundreds of times before. The perspective on feet and ads is constant. Literally. The boredom is real, like a solid thing of steel and stone stuck into my head. Unavoidable. What are my alternatives? I won't die if I crawl and fall into the railway without an incoming train crushing me. The 4-foot fall will cause me considerably more pain, but I'll most likely be saved by a kind stranger on the station and be unable to act once the train comes. In that situation, my pain will be endless. So I sit down and wait for the train. So I may bury myself under it. When it finally reaches me, I shall feel the pain of being ripped apart for ages until the light of life leaves my head and my journey comes to an end. At the foot of this seat, I've lived hundreds of lifetimes. In spirit, I am way older than any person who has ever lived. The majority of my life has been a huddle of pain on the floor of a subway station, with a constant view of feet and ads. This is my backup plan. My Hail Mary, please. This is my long shot. I've spent a lifetime typing and posting this letter in the hopes that somebody will read it and realize that my misery must stop. Someone is currently using this platform. Someone who will hunt down and kill the man curled under the seat, the man who crept down the stairs. A shot to the head. Please shoot me if you're armed and at the subway station. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. We appreciate your support. If you have a view or story suggestion, we would love to hear from you in the comments. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss any new video. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.